This may be the scariest story ever that I've ever heard. A guy writes his experience and he says that his wife started peeking at him. At first it was pranks. So he'd be like in the kitchen cooking his dinner and he'd notice, or he'd feel like someone was watching him, and he'd turn around and his wife was just... He said that it always used to make him jump, make him scared. She was hiding behind walls, under tables, and she'd never say anything. When she was caught, she'd just run away. She started doing it in really obscure places, like she'd get in an ottoman and just have her eyes poking out. It really started to freak him out and scare him, so he used to shout at her. And then he said that it kind of stopped for a bit. And while they were having dinner one night, he said, "Oh, you're not peeking at me anymore." And she said, "Maybe I'm just getting better at it and you're not noticing me." So then it starts getting creepy again and he's noticing her a bit more. It's scaring him even more that she's not reacting to it. She's not laughing. She's not going, "Hey, I got you." She just runs away, walks away and never acknowledges it. And there's one time where he's in the bathroom and he's hearing this weird sound. And he gets in the shower, he's locked the bathroom door. And when he turns after being in the shower for God knows how many minutes, she's peeking around the curtain at him and her hair and her face is soaking wet and it really scares him. So he shouts at her saying "This needs to stop." And she goes and he gets out the shower and he locks the bathroom door because he's too scared to be around his wife. And he says he's in this room for 45, 50 minutes and he starts hearing this really heavy breathing, but excited breathing. And he thinks that she's next to the door, but he's too scared to look underneath the door in case she's under there staring. And then he says that he's working up the courage to unlock the door when he notices the cupboard in the bathroom door is slightly ajar and she's just been in that cupboard. I feel sick saying this. She's just standing in this cupboard just staring at him for 45, 50 minutes and she looks excited that he's caught her out. So he unlocks the door, he runs to the bedroom, grabs the bag and gets in his car and drives away because he's like, "I don't want to live like this. It's gone further than a prank. She's scaring me." He goes to his brother's house and he tries to explain what's going on. And his brother's like, "Yeah, okay then." And his brother's wife's like, "I think she's just playing a prank." And he's like, "No, it's gone beyond a prank. It's terrifying. It's like she's haunting me. She's a creep." And then his wife starts texting him saying where have you gone? Why are you doing this? But never apologising, never saying sorry. And he just replies "You know what you're doing. Until you admit to what you're doing and it stops, I'm not coming home." He decides to stay the night at his brother's house. And when they're all getting ready for bed, they're in the lounge. She's there at the window and there's saliva marks on the window and she's just staring at them. And they all get creeped out, they all scream, and then she's gone. And he's like, "Look, I'm telling you, there's something wrong with her." So he calls her mum and he says, "Look, what's going on?" And this mum just declines even talking about it. She's like, "I don't have time for this, bye." She obviously knows something's going on. He stays at his brother's house for a while. I don't know how long, but he says he's there for a while and he finally needs to get more clothes and he works up the courage to go to the house. So when they get to the house, they open the doors and it's all dark. She's shut all the curtains. It's in the middle of the daytime, but it's dark. So the brother goes around and he's opening some curtains and they can see that the place is just trashed. And all of the family photos have just been shattered. She's just trashed the place. And he goes upstairs to the bedroom to get his clothes. And as he's going up the stairs, he can smell rot and decay. I'd turn around. I'm not dealing with that. I'd call the police. No. Go into the bedroom and that's where a load of the mess is. There's photos strewn over the place, broken picture frames, just shit everywhere. And he's getting his clothes, and as he lifts up a pile of his clothes, he notices an eyeball, but he says it's a small eyeball, like an animal's. And in the cupboard, there's just eyes of different shapes and sizes that are clearly just from murdered animals. And he shouts and freaks out, and his brother's like, "What's going on?" He's like, "Something isn't right here." And that's when he starts hearing that excited, raspy breathing. And he looks under the bed and she's there just staring at him excited that she's being caught. And he says that he was just petrified. He just stood there and said to his brother, like, go and get help, go and get help. And his brother's like, come into the bedroom. He's like, don't come in here, go and get help. Her hands are covered in blood because she's like holding this glass and it's just been cut in her hands. And he gets down to a level and he's like, look, babe, you need help. I want to help you. After all, it's his wife, a creepy motherfucker, but it's his wife. And she reaches her hand out to him and he goes to grab it and then she stabs him with a bit of glass. And then he's like, what the fuck, bitch? And then he's just like, what? And he says that at that moment he knew that that wasn't his wife anymore, and they just ran down those stairs. He said that he felt like she was running after them, but they didn't want to turn around, and they got in the car and they drove away. He was too scared to go to the brother's house, and so was the brother, because she'd already been to this house. And he says he ended it, and we haven't had an update from him yet, but he ended it saying that he got himself in a hotel room, and he says that he keeps on feeling like someone's washing him. Imagine being haunted by your wife, by something living. That's disgusting.
If you're laying in bed and you actually want to sleep tonight, then you should skip this. For the rest of us who like scaring the shit out of ourselves, welcome. When I was a kid, my best friend asked a Ouija board how old she was going to be when she died. Okay, spoiler, it told her 22. Probably wondering, did she die at 22? I'm going to tell you a story that only 3 people know. Well, 2, because one of them is dead. This story starts about 20 years ago when Christina and I were about 12. We were inseparable and we used to hang out with her older sister all the time. We were at their house a lot. It looked like a normal suburban house on the outside, but I swear you walked in and it was like a portal to the underworld. This house scared the absolute shit out of me. I would hear screams coming from the attic and I would look down this long, dark, creepy hallway, see dark figures like motioning up when I'm trying to sleep at night. To make matters worse, we would sit in her room with the lights dim, pull out the Ouija board and play all the time. But here's the thing, it only ever worked for Christina. It was like she had some weird connection to it. Naturally, her sister and I always thought this was fake and she was just doing it for attention because it would move so fast all over the place, telling us everything. Never worked when we did it alone, so we were a little bit suspicious. Whatever ghost was on the other side of this had diarrhea of the mouth. This was not like you see on the horror movies where it's like, oh, this is slowly moving to yes or no. Like, no, this was like a T9 texting expert ghost that word vomited constantly. So one day we had just finished watching Big Fish, and in that movie there is this creepy old witch, and you can ask her how old you're going to be when you die. Christina loved this idea. Next thing you know, she's pulling out the Ouija board and immediately asking, how old am I going to be when I die? Planchette slowly starts to move towards the numbers and it hovers over the 2. And then it takes a little bit of a movement back and comes right back to the 2. Christina didn't even skip a beat. She grabs her red notebook that she wrote down all of the answers the Ouija board said in it, wrote down, age I'm going to die, 22. Completely calm. Little did we know, something was set in motion and some weird shit started happening for the next 10 years. About a year after the Ouija board incident, Christina's middle school boyfriend tragically died. He was babysitting his 3-year-old little sister, hanging a rope swing for her in the backyard. The parents got home, found the little girl screaming in the backyard, looking at her brother hanging by the tree. He accidentally got tangled in the rope and hung himself. He had been dead for about 3 hours. While Christina was upset about this, she wasn't hysterical, more so distant. And she said to me, I think I'm gonna see him again soon. I just don't see myself growing old. I can't be that upset about it because something like that might happen to me. For the sake of being able to sleep at night, I wrote off a lot of these things. Christina and I grew apart over the years. A couple of other creepy things happened here and there, but for the most part, I think she had a pretty normal life. She got a job, got a fiance, seemed pretty happy from what I could tell. So now we're about 21 and Christina's wedding is coming up. I didn't go to the wedding, but I saw this footage later. Christina's standing at the altar, all smiles, having just been married, trying to take photos with her family. Softly in the background, you hear a little girl singing the Itsy Bitsy Spider. Christina yells super loudly, Kenna, it's time to take photos. And the camera just slowly pans left. And then you get a great view of this beautiful little flower girl sitting in a pew, holding a Bible upside down, singing the Itsy Bitsy Spider. She shuts the Bible, takes a couple of steps towards the aisle, and slowly walks forward. I shit you not, this 3-year-old looks up at this bride and says, "Christina, are you gonna die soon?" Freaked out when she heard this, which would be a normal response, but I heard her talk about death so many times as a teenager and just how it didn't faze her that it was a little bit odd to hear her talking about it like this. I really think it's because she was 5 months pregnant. Things had changed for her. About a year after the wedding, Christina was at a cabin with her family in the mountains, having some celebration. Everyone was there, including her newborn son. It seemed like one of those days where nothing could go wrong. Her family always had a 4-wheeler that we would take around the mountains and have a really good time on. At some point in the afternoon, her and a friend decided to take it out for a ride. But that day, something was different. As they rode through the trails, everything seemed all right until Christina screamed, "The brakes aren't working." They flew off of a cliff. Both of them were rushed to the hospital. Christina didn't make it. She died on the way there. 22.
As many of you know, I grew up in deep Appalachia. I now live in Atlanta, Georgia, and there are times where I'll tell my friends stories from what happened to me when I lived out there, and they're like, "What?" I already posted about my UFO story last year, and that video got to like 3 million views. But today, I'm going to tell you guys the story of when I was a kid and I encountered a skinwalker, or at least what I thought was a skinwalker. I hate long intros, so I'm just going to get into the story. The place I lived was a place called Jasper, Georgia. It's right next to LJ. And I lived in the place where the show Squidbillies was based on, and we have a Squidbillies shrine in our town center. I had a friend that I would stay with pretty often, and her family owned a 300-acre farm. And when I say family, it's just her and her mom who live there. And so they have like all these farm animals, and they have different parts of their land that you have to walk through trails in the woods to get through. Like, in order to get to one barn, you have to walk through the woods for like 10 minutes just to get there. So there was one day that I was sleeping over there, and we had been home alone all day. I was probably in 3rd grade when this happened. Some of you might ask why me and my friend were just like 2 3rd graders alone on this farm. And it was because my parents were getting a divorce, and so I needed a place to go, so I pretty much lived with this girl at the time. But back to the story. So my friend's mom was on the way home, but I guess there was like a lot of traffic, or she was running late or something. So she called my friend and she asked her if we could like go down to one of the barns and feed the horses before we went to bed. So at this point in time, it was probably like 8 o'clock. The sun was going down. It was about to be nighttime. You could still see the sun and the light when you're in the open field, but in the woods, it was like pretty dark. Like there was no sunlight. So my friend and I started walking through the pasture to the woods, and she had a flashlight with her. We got to the woods, she turned the flashlight on, and we started walking. We were walking for maybe like 3 or 4 minutes through these woods, so we're about halfway through the trail, and we're just talking about some shit and laughing. And then all of a sudden, my friend just stops talking, and like I was kind of just like looking at her, like as we were speaking. I wasn't really looking in front of me. And then she just like drops the flashlight and starts sprinting in the opposite direction, like back to the house. And so I was like, "You okay, Rebecca?" And because that was her name. And I turn and I see her sprinting, and the flashlight was just like on the floor in front of me. And I was like, "What the fuck?" So I turned back in front of me, and I just see like maybe like 10 feet away this gigantic like white figure. And I didn't look at it for long, but just like the sheer height of this thing, whatever the fuck it was, scared me so badly that I looked at it and immediately was like fight or flight mode. Like I felt danger. So right when I looked at it, I turned the other way and fucking booked it. I was running faster than I'd ever ran before. So fast that I passed my friend And I was like running and pissing my pants at the same time. Like, that's how fucking scary it was. And so I ran all the way back to her house, and in my brain I was like, what is the one place I can hide right now where no one will find me? And the only thing I could think of was like, I just ran to the laundry room and I got in the dryer. And so I was just sitting in the dryer, and it was like one of those old school dryers. It wasn't like plastic clear cover, so it was just like a white door that closes it from the front. And so I was just in there. I was like curled up in a ball, and I waited like, I don't know, what seemed like 15-20 minutes. I was just in there covered in piss, and eventually I thought that whatever the fuck was in the woods had like killed my friend. And so I was just crying and like I was freaking out, but I was also terrified and didn't want to die. So I was just sitting in there. And then eventually my friend walks through the door, and I can tell that she's crying and she's like hyperventilating. She's like like I hear that. And so I open the dryer, and she's like scared when I open it, obviously. And I was just like also crying, and we hug each other, and I was like, where did you go? And so she told me that she had ran and she got into like this trailer that was kind of near the house, because it was the only place she could think of to hide. And so we were both hiding, and I guess she just like mustered up the courage to run to the main house. And so we were both just like trying to explain what we saw and like put together whatever the fuck that was. And this was like 2008, maybe 2009. So I think I was like 12 or something when this happened, but this was way before like creepypasta or like any of these stories were like even around. So we couldn't even put a name to like what the fuck we saw out there. And so when her mom finally got home, we tried to explain what just happened, and she just like dismissed us, and she was like, you girls are just like overreacting. You guys saw a bear or like a deer or something, which is still terrifying if we saw a bear, but it definitely was not a bear, because this thing was like pure white. And in the dark, it's like the only thing you can really see is like, if there's someone standing in front of you with a white t-shirt, like you're gonna see that. But this thing was completely white, and that's all I remember is just like this gigantic, like 7 or 8 foot tall thing just like standing right in front of me, staring at me. And so I'm not friends with this girl anymore. I haven't talked to her in probably like 15 years. But I just remember that story, and I remember being so scared that I pissed myself. And the only thing I could think of that being is like a skinwalker. So maybe that is a skinwalker. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed that story. I've never told that on here, so I hope you guys were entertained and enjoyed it, and maybe got scared. But anyways, later this week I'm going to post another story about the Appalachian feral people, because I think I also had an experience with that when I was younger. There was a lot of weird shit that happened. But yeah, thank you guys.
You guys want to hear a scary story? It reminds me a lot of Insidious, but it's real. One time when I was babysitting these 2 girls, talked about them in a video before this. We were going to call the older one Luna and the younger one Aura. That's what I called them last time. I was babysitting, and the older one had an imaginary friend that she called Pete. I would always sense weird energy in this house. Disturbing, dark, like not good, friendly Casper the Ghost. And then one time, the oldest Luna at the time was, I want to say she was 3 or 4. And the baby, Aura, was like 6 months old. And I had put Aura down for bed. Put her in her little swaddle, got her all set up. She was snug as a bug, cute, perfect sleeping. And me and Luna were out in the living room, because I was like, okay, we can play one game together, like before you go to sleep, because Aura obviously went to bed a little bit earlier. I think we pulled out like Candyland, some board game, which obviously she doesn't know how to play the ins and outs and the rules because she's 3. But when we were playing, she had another little character, and it was Pete's, right? And every time, I swear to God, I would look away, I'd look back, and it would move, and she'd be like, oh, Pete moved it. And I'm like, okay, Luna, like, you obviously moved it, you know? Like, she's 3, and I know she's just like, you know, she doesn't know how to play the game. Now I know it was literally this dark spirit that was moving it, but stay with me. I'm like, okay, Luna, sure. And then out of nowhere, we're playing and the TV was on in the background. Excuse me. And Luna goes, I love this song. And I'm like listening. I'm like, what song, baby? Like, I don't hear any music. And she said, oh, the song that Pete is singing to me. She said, it's a song that my daddy plays on his guitar because their dad played guitar, I guess. Like, I'd always see the guitar. Sometimes it'd be in the living room or sometimes it'd be in the parents' room. Like, when I go in there to grab stuff for the kids, it was just like always propped against a wall. And I was like, oh, that's nice. Like, remember what we said about Pete? Because I told her I didn't want her talking to Pete because, again, this felt like a dark energy. And it sucked because every time I was there, I felt like he was sitting in between me and her. Like, he was always, the spirit, Pete, was always hovering. It would never go away. So anyways, I'm like, what song? Blah, blah. And she's like, I'm trying to get her to describe to me again. She's 3. She doesn't really know how to describe it. And she says, no, Pete said he'll play for you. And I said, no, that's okay. Like, want anything to do with it? She said, no, he'll play for you. Just hold on. So I ignore it and we start playing this game again. Just moving little pieces across the board. And all of a sudden I hear the strum of a guitar. Just a solo strum, like an off chord. And I just get chills down my back because at this time the guitar was in the parents' room. I only knew that. I hadn't gone in their room that time, but because I heard it and their door was shut. And Luna jumps up. She's like, oh, I told you, Riley. Like, I told you. Pete said he'd show you the song. It's my favorite song. And I'm terrified. Like, I'm trying so hard to act cool. I don't know how this little girl is not so scared. But I'm just like, oh, okay, hold on. Let me just go look real quick. Because my immediate thought was like, maybe somebody's in the house. Like, a real person. Because that sounded way too real. It literally was just a strum of a guitar. So I go into the parents' room, I turn on all lights, the guitar is just sitting against the wall. Nobody's in the house, I do a sweep, and I'm like really disturbed because every sweep I'm doing, I feel like something is just hovering and following me into every room I'm going into. So I finally sit back down with her, I'm like, okay babe, let's watch like 10 more minutes of the show and then like we're gonna go to bed. When I sat on the couch with her, it was the first time I felt like not super heavy, overpowering energy, and I'm like, whew, okay, like. But anyways, I was like, okay, this feels a little less heavy. Sorry, my dog's drinking water in the background. She's so loud. So I'm like, okay, I can breathe a little bit. And I pick up the baby monitor right next to us. You guys know what's coming. You've seen the scary movies because it literally was just like that. Pick up the baby monitor to check on Aura. And literally gag when I think about this because it was so terrifying. I see a hand, right next to the baby. She's sleeping, she's swaddling, and it's a creepy hand where the nails are like this long and it's just this black shadowy hand just right next to her. And again, this is the first time I said I felt relieved, like I wasn't being followed. It's because it went in the other room. I freak out. I literally sprinted, ran, busted into Aura's room, woke her up because I came in the door so hot. She was crying and just felt that energy in that room was disgusting. I pick her up, I bring her back out to the living room. I'm like trying to explain to the parents when they come home, like they're gonna think I'm insane of why their kids are still awake. And I'm sitting on the couch with the baby and with Luna, and I forgot to turn off the baby monitor. And I literally hear just disembodied voices coming from the baby monitor. Terrifying, out of nowhere, loud. And I literally just shut the baby monitor off. And the baby ended up falling back asleep in my arms. Luna ended up falling back asleep and she like fell asleep on me, like her little head was on my shoulder when the parents came home. I was like, sorry, they're just like so sweet and they just wanted to sleep out here with me. Because I tried again to, like I've explained this in the other video, but I tried to kind of bring it up to them before, how like something I thought was going on in their house paranormal. And they looked at me like I was fucking insane. So I knew I wasn't getting anywhere with that. But that was also one of the terrifying times I experienced babysitting for those kids.
You don't believe in ghosts, I don't blame you because I didn't either until I met Emma, okay? Look, I'm from a small town. Some might even call it a farm town. The entire thing basically fits on one street. We call it the Boulevard. But what's in small farm towns that all fit on one street called the Boulevard? Usually religious families, okay? My family included. One day, we got a girl from out of town. Her name was Tori. She'll come back in the story later. But the focus right now is Emma, okay? Emma was my best friend, okay? Her family was basically my second family. They had like 1 million kids. And when you have 1 million kids in a house in California, they're gonna share rooms, okay? So Emma shared a room with her little sister. Emma comes to me crying one day. I'm like, girl, what's going on? Mind you, Emma is not a dramatic girl. Very level-headed, very serious, pragmatic, dry sense of humor, right? Emma comes to me sobbing, and I'm like,
are you good? She goes, no, I need to talk to you, but you're going to think I'm crazy. I'm like, girl, I don't think you're crazy. Like, lay it on me, you know? She goes, I've been having paranormal experiences for the past couple years. And I'm like, because while my family is religious, I'm also very science-minded. And I'm like, I need some empirical evidence to believe this, right? So I'm like, okay, tell me what's happening. She goes, I've been home alone and I've been hearing screaming, slamming doors, and I've been seeing people walk down my hall. I'm like, Emma, I so hear you. I also have heard bumps, you know, like I see things sometimes. I really think, and she's like, no, that's not everything. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's like, I was home alone the other day and I go to walk in my room and she has those door handles that have like the little curly whatever, right? I told you she shares a room with her sister, Ava. So she sees the door handle twisting down and she thinks that this is the perfect opportunity to scare her little sister, right? So she waits there and she sees it going down and she opens the door and she goes, Ava, no one's there. No one's behind the door. Okay. And I'm like, Emma, are you sure? And she's like, I'm sure. I'm like, okay, I hear you. I hear you. What else? She's like, okay, obviously Ava and I sleep in the same room. I'm like, yes. She goes, okay, so I don't know what was happening, but last night I wake up in the middle of the night and Ava is sitting in the corner by herself talking to the wall. I'm like, ooh, that's kind of creepy. And she's like, yeah, no, it gets worse, okay? She's playing dolls with someone. And I'm like, Ava, go to bed. And she's like, but I'm playing with my friend. And Emma's like, Ava, no one's in here. Who are you talking to? And Ava looks back at her and goes, my friend over here, the man in black. And Emma's like, Ava, no one's there. And she goes, yeah, he is. He's right there. You can't see him? Emma's like, Ava, I swear to God, get your ass back in bed. I'm not fucking around. Ava goes back to bed. Okay, bye. As she's walking away from the corner. Crawls into her bunk. Emma can't sleep the rest of the night. Admittedly, the whole Ava thing threw me off a little bit. I'm like, okay, did you talk to your parents about this by chance? And she was like, of course I talked to my parents about this. I told both of them about it, and both of them think I'm lying, and my mom told me to stop bringing it up. And I was like, oh, you're kind of in a pickle. She was like, yeah, I even talked to my bishop at church, and he said that nothing can happen unless my dad reports it. And I'm like, double pickle. I don't know what to tell you, girl. Like, that sucks. Maybe sleep with the Bible under your head, okay? But anyways, so a couple weeks go by. I get a phone call in the middle of the night. Emma, sobbing. I'm like, girl, what is happening? She's like, you'll never believe what just happened. I'm literally freaking out. I'm like, okay, tell me. She goes, okay, so I was getting in the shower. I'm like, yes. She's like, okay, and I went to turn the shower on, right? And so I turned the knob, and Natalie, I'm not saying it's blood. And I'm like, I beg your friend's pardon. She goes, I'm not saying that it's blood, but this really red, like sticky liquid starts dripping from the wall, like where the shower head meets the wall. And I'm like, she's like, and I scream, obviously, because it looks like blood. And her mom comes running in the bathroom and is like, what's going on? What's going on? And she's like, Mom, what? And she's like pointing at it, right? Like, and her mom goes, Emma, get out. And she was like, what? And her mom runs over it, grabs a towel and starts like wiping up the wall. And Emma's like, Mom, what's going on? And her mom goes, Emma, get out of the bathroom. Do not tell your father about this. And Emma's like, Mom, I'm really scared. And she goes, leave now. Don't tell your dad. And slams the door and locks it. Cleans up the mess. After all of this happens, Emma's obviously on the phone with me. I'm like, girl, you got to talk to your mom. She's like, I tried after. And my mom literally won't talk to me. She told me to go to bed. And I'm like, and then this is where Tori comes back in the picture. Over this year, I had become friends with Tori, okay? Emma doesn't really know Tori, but I am really close with her. So one time, Tori comes over to my house. Her and Emma know of each other, right? Tori goes, dude, I had the weirdest dream the other night. I'm like, oh yeah, like what happened? She goes, so I don't know why, but I had a dream that I was hanging out with Emma. And I was like, oh, like, that's weird. And she's like, yeah. And it was super weird. And I'm like in her house, right? So I'm like walking through the front door and she's like imagining it as she's doing it. Walking through the front door, and to the left, there's the living room. And in front of me, if you keep going straight and then you turn right, it's the kitchen. And then there's, to the right, there's a hallway too. And I'm like, how do you know Emma's floor plan, right? She lays Emma's house out like to the T. She goes, and so like I'm walking, and I'm in the kitchen and I'm sitting at the table, and in front of the table there is like a game closet, and I'm like, Yeah. And she's like, and inside the game closet, if you open both of the doors, there's a mirror on the back. And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, and I'm sitting at the table, and standing behind me is this man dressed in all black. I felt all of the blood go from my head to my toes. I'm like, excuse me? Come again? A man dressed in all black? She was like, yeah, and I don't know what the fuck it was, but he was the scariest, most dark feeling I've ever had in my entire life. I just feel like you should check on Emma. And I'm like, girl, I've checked on Emma. And she goes, what do you mean? And I'm like, Emma's actually having like a lot of really weird paranormal experiences. And her little sister described the ghost that she saw as the man in black. Corey is like, oh, I'm so sorry. I don't mean to scare you even more, but I have like a lot of weird, like, I don't want to call them psychic dreams because that sounds crazy, but kind of like psychic dreams often. And I'm like, amazing. Love that. So of course I report back to Emma, and then Emma ends up telling her dad because obviously, right? She doesn't tell her dad about the specific mom experience because she was like really freaked out, and like her mom still denies that happened, and she's like, right? But apparently everything kind of stopped after that. Emma and I ended up falling out of contact for a couple years because she moved away shortly after that. But then I called her a couple years ago and I was like, hey girl, whatever happened with all that stuff? And she was like, honestly, I think it was the house because luckily we put that man behind us. No pun intended.
I used a Ouija board one single time in my life when I was about 13, and I never will again, ever, ever. I don't even want to look at one. I don't want one around me. I will never touch one again. It was a one and done, and here's why. So my friends and I were like 13, right? We're having a sleepover. We get a Ouija board. We don't have, like the thing for the middle, for it to move on the board. So we're using a coin, and this is what, and so we barely all have our fingertips on this coin because there's like 5 of us, and all of our fingers aren't fitting on this coin, which is how I know nobody was moving it. It's one reason I know nobody was moving it, because we couldn't have it would have been so obvious if somebody was moving it. So anyway, we start off, nothing's happening, and then boom, in comes this ghost spirit, whatever, and it's talking to us, and we ask it a couple questions, and we're like, are you nice? Yes. Did you die in this town? Yes. And then we ask it, do you know our names? It says yes. And we say, what are our names? Basically, it gets to a point where it says that it can only tell us like the first initial of our names, right? First extremely weird thing. One of our friends, we all call her a name that begins with L. We all forget that like she even has a name that starts with another letter. The other letter is technically E. So it's saying it's getting to all of our names and it's all correct, and then it says E, and we're like, who's E? And then we're like, oh, because this thing is being like government name official. So it knows all of our initials. It puts her as E, even though we all call her a name that is L. And then we say, can we see you? And it says no. And we said why? And it spells out ugly. And we ask it, are you ugly because of how you died? And it says yes. And it said it was a boy that is our age. We said, how did you die? And it said fire, spelled out fire. And we said here, and it said in town. We asked it, now keep in mind, this went on for like, I don't know, an hour, maybe more. It felt like a long time. We asked it if it was, guys, I lost my train of thought because I kept hearing somebody saying my name, and it was starting to creep me out. And then I realized it was actually just my mom from another room, and she was saying my name. She wanted something else. Anyway, regardless. So this night happens, right? It died in a fire, blah, 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 blah. I'm creeped out. We go on with our lives. About a week or two later, it's the middle of the night. It's about 5 o'clock in the morning, 5:30 in the morning, whatever. And my smoke detector in my house is going off. And this ends up happening for like 2 weeks straight. We took the batteries out, we changed the batteries. Eventually, we just took it down entirely because we're like, what is going on with this thing? Well, I couldn't say anything. I didn't tell my parents what I did because
my dad's a preacher, and I would have probably been banned from the house, or was a preacher. I would have probably been banned from the house if they knew that I had touched that, because that was like a strict no, 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 no. Like, you didn't mess around with stuff like that. If you followed my haunted house stories, by the way, this was after I lived there, so I probably was not a great candidate to be messing with a Ouija board when I had just gone through that experience, but we had moved into a new house, and that's where I messed with the Ouija board. Did not mess with the Ouija board when I lived in the super, super haunted house, if you guys know that story. But anyway, yeah, so this went on. A couple of my friends had really weird things happen, whatever. Well, so boom, I finally, about 3 months after, it ends up, nothing continues to happen. The smoke detector thing goes away, whatever. I decide to get brave enough to look up if this story could be corroborated. Like, was there a fire in my town, blah, blah, blah. And yes, there was. And yes, one of the people that died was a boy that had been my age at the time, back in the day. Time of death, or the time that they arrived at the fire to presume them all dead, was 5:30 in the morning. I don't want anything to do with the Ouija board ever again.